Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, January 3rd, 2022, and today we're going to be talking about Kevin McCarthy, the soon-to-be, or potentially not, Speaker of the House of Representatives, a Republican from California who has led the Republican Party since Paul Ryan's retiring back in 2018. Kevin McCarthy has been long seen as the successor to Speaker Nancy Pelosi, someone who has led the Republicans to victory in the 2022 House elections, with them reclaiming control of the House for the first time since 2019, winning it back after 2 election cycles. The Republicans maintaining a lead over the Democrats by about 9 seats, 5 past the necessary needed for a majority. Now, this is actually quite interesting because it is an exact copy of what the numbers were back in 2020. After those House elections, Democrats won 222 seats in 2020. In 2022, Republicans won 222. It's a lot of twos to be talking about this, but it is very interesting. The United States Congress is composed of nearly the same number of Republicans and Democrats with very little turnover, but some very fascinating dynamics when it comes down to the speaker elections. Now, he made a video talking about Nancy Pelosi deciding to take a step back from politics after her 2020 bid for Speaker of House of Representatives. When she ran, she made an assurance to the squad and many other Democrats concerned about her leadership that she would not stand to be the leader in future elections. She would not stand to be Speaker should Democrats maintain control in 2022. Now, at that point in time, the House majority was so slim that there was no consideration that there would ever be another speaker besides Kevin McCarthy in 2022. And now that seems to be changing. The reason being, the House majority is so slim. And there's also some outspoken Republicans who refuse to vote for Kevin McCarthy in any type of scenario. Some major names here: Andy Biggs from the state of Arizona, who won with 57% of the vote in the last election. Lauren Boebert, who had an extremely close election in Colorado's 3rd, won by just 0.2% in her Trump +8, I think, district. She won here by just 0.2% against her Democratic opponent, but is now in Congress leading one of the major pushbacks against Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. Altogether, you have about 20 Republicans refusing to back Kevin McCarthy, and for the first time since 1923, we will not have a speaker after the first ballot, and embarrassingly enough for Kevin McCarthy, we're heading into beyond a 3rd ballot. They held a 2nd ballot, they held a 3rd ballot, and ultimately, Kevin McCarthy is failing to win over these Republicans. Now, the problem also lies just in the general understanding that Kevin McCarthy is unpopular within the GOP, in a very similar fashion that Nancy Pelosi was back in 2021. The fundamental difference: Nancy Pelosi knows how to whip votes. She knows how to win over her caucus like it's no big deal. But for Kevin McCarthy, he has struggled on a very public manner. They've had 2 months to figure this out, 2 months to make consideration, make deals, have discussions about who's going to be the next House Speaker. And after all of this, Kevin McCarthy is still coming up short. And looking at who they're deciding to push forward instead of McCarthy, they are trying to put forth Representative Jim Jordan from the state of Ohio. Now, Jim Jordan, being from the state of Ohio, is a very outspoken representative on the Republican side. He's definitely someone that Republicans have seen pushback because of the comments that he has made. He's definitely more of an outspoken right-wing member compared to the average Republican in Congress. And with these votes, he's getting about 20 Republicans to back him. He got 6 in the initial tally. Andy Biggs got 10. But by the 3rd round, he's gotten about 20. The fascinating thing of it all: Jim Jordan isn't even voting for himself. He's voting for Kevin McCarthy. So why Jim Jordan? Well, in many people's eyes, Jim Jordan is seen as this juxtaposition to Kevin McCarthy. He's someone who has stood with the Trump Republicans, the Make America Great Again Republicans. Sorry about that, my screen recorder cut out, but we were talking about how Kevin McCarthy and Jim Jordan were very, very different people. Essentially, Jim Jordan, in a way to summarize it, is, simply put, the Trump version of Kevin McCarthy in many, many ways. Even though Kevin McCarthy has associated himself with Donald Trump, Jim Jordan is an extreme Republican, and everybody knows it, which is why he attracts these more extreme Republicans. That's why he attracts a certain number of voters for his group. 20 is not exactly an impressive number, but the thing is that Jim Jordan isn't vying for the speakership. It also is a bit embarrassing that in this 2022 Congress, Kevin McCarthy is unable to win more than 203 votes in the first round. In fact, more embarrassingly, the Republicans, Kevin McCarthy, lost an additional vote by the time we headed into the final round, meaning that there was someone who was there who voted for Kevin McCarthy first, voted for him again, and then ultimately decided against voting for him in the third round, which isn't a good sign. Hakeem Jeffries, on the other hand, the Democrat, has withstood at 212, winning all sides of the Democratic caucus. Nancy Pelosi did not get 6 votes from Democrats in 2020 after those House elections. 6 Democrats voted present, voted, against her, or voted for somebody else. Point being that 6 Democrats defected last time, 0 this time around, with a lot of the same repeat members, which means there's a unified Democratic front. But Hakeem Jeffries needs a majority in order to become Speaker of the House, and considering that Democrats are in the minority, that probably isn't going to happen. This whole drama and issue with Kevin McCarthy just lies in the fact that Republicans can't seem to unify. It doesn't mean it's necessarily good news for Democrats, but it definitely shows a level of intensely high disarray amongst the GOP, a failure, ruin, as I put it in the video title. And it is entirely true. Kevin McCarthy is failing to win more speaker votes in this election than he did in the last one when Republicans were in the minority. A lot of these Republicans pushing back against McCarthy this time around didn't push back against him before. And ultimately, that's where you see a lot of drop-off. You see people that backed him before that no longer do because of stances and positions that he has taken over the past 2 years. Some of them see Kevin McCarthy as a rhino, a Republican in name only. There's about 7 Republican representatives, too, that refuse to vote for Kevin McCarthy in any type of circumstance. And this is where it gets tricky for Republicans. Because their House majority is 222 and Democrats have 213, assuming that everybody votes, the necessary number to become Speaker is 218. It's the majority of the House of Representatives. But the way that things work is that while people can vote for other representatives, can vote for other members for Speaker, you still need that majority number. But if people decide if people decide not to vote for Kevin McCarthy, decide to vote for another Republican, it still prevents Kevin McCarthy from reaching 218. But if they say, I still don't want to vote for Kevin McCarthy, but I will not vote for another Republican because I want to vote absent, or I want to vote present, I don't want my vote to count. That is where it helps Democrats. If Republicans eventually try to force these 7, potentially up to 20 Republicans that are refusing to vote for McCarthy now to make a decision between Jeffries and McCarthy, some of them may vote present. And the reason why that is an issue is because it lowers the bar for overall majority. Think about it this way. 218 is only necessary if everybody votes. If, let's say, we take 222 and take away 7 Republicans, that's 215. Democrats have 213. Together, that's 428 votes. To become Speaker, you need the majority of votes, not the majority of Congress. Meaning that in this circumstance, you would find that Republicans would need 215. So if the 7 removed themselves, Kevin McCarthy could still end up winning. But the problem is, they're either choosing to vote for another Republican because they don't want to lower the threshold for McCarthy to win. And also, there's a good chance that, let's say, all 20 of these Republicans, which is a very, very big stretch, but if 20 of these Republicans decide, I'm voting present, not for Kevin McCarthy, unfortunately for the Republicans, Hakeem Jeffries would win. It's really just a whole interesting dynamic because no matter what, Kevin McCarthy is kind of screwed at this point. Unless these Republicans come over to decide to support him, Kevin McCarthy isn't going to get the speakership that easily. I do think inevitably that Kevin McCarthy will end up being Speaker of the House of Representatives. But depending on the moves that some of these Republicans take, if they want to be as extremely outspoken and as pushing back on Kevin McCarthy, you will find that some of them will be spiteful. There are representatives on the Republican side that have told the media that they would rather have Jeffries than McCarthy, simply because of their hatred of Kevin McCarthy. There are Republicans out there that agree with that understanding because they see this as something that could be fixed in the future, maybe vacating the speaker's position or winning it back further in 2024, where you could have a different type of Republican in the speakership. But this 222 majority is so slim, and Republicans have already lost a tremendous amount of votes. Seeing Jim Jordan at 20 votes after 3 rounds of the speakership, things are getting very, very serious. We will see tomorrow if voters decide to reward Kevin McCarthy, not voters, if the Republicans decide to reward Kevin McCarthy with the speakership, should they change their minds about their votes for Jim Jordan. But as of right now, Kevin McCarthy is stuck. This is the first time again since 1923. 99 years ago was the last time that a speakership went to more than one ballot. And it ended up going to a very large number of ballots. The most, I think, in American history, 9-10 ballots, somewhere around there after the Civil War or right before the Civil War. But the point being, sometime around the 1860s. So we're working with a very, very weird timeline where the last time this happened, there was, it was a very long time ago. The point being that parties have come forth much more organized, much more ready to tackle on the new Congress than Republicans have now. The past century, both parties have come to the House of Representatives more prepared after maintaining or winning control than Kevin McCarthy has in this circumstance. And altogether, it's just simply such a poor look. Coming off of an election year where you barely regained control of the House of Representatives, there isn't much here that impresses me. There isn't much here that tells me that the Republican Party has done major advancements relative to the last election. Because 222 to 213 is exactly where the Democrats were. The only difference, Democrats are significantly more organized, more unified, and ready to tackle on Congress, including this time around. There are now reports that Democrats are trying to work with McCarthy and other Republicans to figure out a power-sharing agreement. The only catch is there shouldn't be a power-sharing agreement based off of where we stand right now. Democrats are not the ones in the majority, and they certainly aren't tied for it. You can't tie in the House of Representatives if it's both parties in Congress. And that's where it is so interesting to see these dynamics play out in Congress. It has become more difficult for the Republicans to really lead and come into this with a mandate. Sure, they won control of the House, but now it looks like they can't even decide amongst themselves about whether they'd rather have a Republican or a Democrat as Speaker of the House, or whether or not they'd rather have one extreme Republican over the Republican who led them to victory in 2022. It is truly a fascinating debacle, but it's one that we must cover and one that is going to be all too important as we head into the next election cycle for House control. The reason being, Republicans won the national popular vote by about 4 points in this election. That wasn't a blowout. It wasn't a major victory. And Democrats, should they narrow up the popular vote in 2024, have a very good shot at regaining House control. The time to act for the GOP is now. The time for leadership is now. And unfortunately for the GOP, they can't seem to make an agreement as to who they support or what they envision for the future of their party and their future of congressional leadership. We will see tomorrow when the House of Representatives comes back in for a vote around noon Eastern time. I was watching this on, I think C-SPAN or Congress.gov, one or the other. I was watching these speaker votes come in, and right at the moment where, Kevin McCarthy no longer had enough votes, we knew this was not going to be finished today. We knew that McCarthy was going to extend beyond, and in many ways, this shows the Republican Party's inefficiency. I think that is something that Republicans have really seen as a major problem with their appeal and pitch to the American public, that they aren't really able to do much. And it's also something to be said that the House majority is so exceptionally slim, and if they can't decide on a speaker, it's very possible in future congressional sessions that they can't agree on bills to pass either. You see, the problem is this is just a taste of what we will see in this new Republican House, what we will see with 20 Republicans that seem to be vehemently opposed to Kevin McCarthy as Speaker and likely to Kevin McCarthy's agenda. There are many Republicans in the House that have also agreed that should Kevin McCarthy try to put forth some legislation, they will oppose major things. They will oppose major bills about spending or tax cuts, even if they necessarily agree with it, because they want to stick it to the man, because they don't support Kevin McCarthy. These are the type of representatives that McCarthy and the Republican Party is dealing with, and ultimately, it's not a good look. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter for the GOP at this point. They're not going to get much done with Joe Biden and the Democrats in the Senate, but it doesn't exactly give the American public a great reason to vote for them in future elections. And I think ultimately that should be the problem that Republicans should be worrying about. They seem dysfunctional, they are dysfunctional, and they can't even agree amongst themselves that their minority leader should now become the House Speaker. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.